So he's been in Millhaven institution for almost 8 months now, and he's not receiving the nature and range of programs to which he is entitled to under international norms regarding child soldiers and binding on Canada. The optional protocol on the Convention on the Rights of the Child on the involvement of children in armed conflict, fancy language, which both Canada and the United States have ratified, sets 18 years of age as the minimum age for children to be deemed as child soldiers. Omar Khadr was a child under that convention when he was apprehended, fully 3 years younger than the minimum age required under the convention. Indeed, at the time of his detention in Bagram, the Canadian Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, DFAID, recognized his status as a child combatant. But our government doesn't. So given his status as a minor, and more particularly a child soldier, there is a wide range of international standards that should have been provided to Omar while he was in custody in Guantanamo between 2002 and 2012 that did not occur. And I naively had hoped that Omar Khadr's return to Canada would lead to significant improvements in the protection of his human rights. In particular, I hoped that the refusal of US officials during his 10 years of custody to acknowledge that Omar was a child soldier and to provide him with the treatment and programming required under international law would now give way to such programs now that he was back in Canada. And that's been such a false hope. The Harbour government doesn't seem to get it or even care that our once widely admired and long-established reputation for fairness and justice is simply being squandered. Squandered about Omar, squandered internationally, squandered everywhere. I have people, when I travel, who tell me, this is not the Canada that I once knew. The health of civil liberties and civil rights in any society is directly related to our willingness as citizens to stand up and speak out for our beliefs and our values in the public arena. And if we as citizens lose confidence in the right to speak out about our country's direction, its failure to uphold our values, we then impose our own self-censorship, where there are no longer boundaries to state action and its impermissible behaviours. We must, or I must, remind you, or we must remind ourselves that we are witnesses every day to the erosion of the rule of law, as we have allowed the language of fear and counter-terrorism to be the justification for departing from long-cherished norms of accountability and transparency. We are witnesses to contemporary events with habeas corpus being abandoned, secret courts being created to hear secret evidence, guilt being inferred by association, torture and rendition nakedly justified, and vital international conventions consolidated in the aftermath of the Second World War. The Geneva Conventions, the Refugee Convention, the Torture Convention, and more have all been deliberately avoided and ignored. And our forefathers, I would suggest to you, would never have envisaged that the history of the new century would encompass the destruction and the distortion of fundamental legal and constitutional principles that have been in place since the 17th century. We appear to have forgotten the lessons of the Star Chamber, where the accused were submitted to torture, to accusations based on secret evidence, held by a secret court, while being shackled and held in extremes of isolation. And that goes back to the 17th century. and worse, and far worse, in my view. Much worse. I say this as a father. And that we have bequeathed this social legacy to our children to face. That is the ultimate shame. I stand here and I say to you, they criticize me for many things. But one thing I don't want to be criticized for is I was a bad father. So we have a great responsibility to stand up. So, as I conclude, as I move to the end of my talk, in fighting for Omar, as important as it is, we are also fighting for the preservation of our democratic way of life, our right to freedom of thought and expression, and our commitment to the rule of law. Those are liberties which have been hard won over the century and which we should hold dear. And if we walk away from our duty to uphold human values, who will speak for us and our children when our time comes? So embedded in my talk this evening, as I conclude, has been the responsibility, the imperative to stand against injustice, to speak out to the reality of inhumanity, and to speak out against the moral hollowness of political inaction. Because, in my view, and in the views of many others that have gone before me, the only crime equal to willful inhumanity is the crime of indifference, of silence, and forgetting. Thank you very much.
Mr. Edney, thank you very, very much. Yes, you have pointed out how the Canadian justice system has been degraded, but you and a few others have upheld it. Whatever honor is left to us by your actions and by your words, and I salute you as an honor to what is left of the Canadian justice reality. Thank you so much.
And we'll also send out information we'll send out information so that
what is the most helpful thing that we can do to support Omar Khadr and to act on behalf of the need to have him released? Is it simply to write letters to Vic Taves, or is there something more than that we can do?
Thank you for the question. I wish I knew the answer. I'm a powerful person. I take on governments. Law is a powerful tool. Use it. And yet I said to you tonight, Omar Khadr is still in jail, still incarcerated. And so I've come to realize, and I may regret saying this, that politics trumps. Some of the people that we've elected lack moral vigor, to say the least. And our job is to make them accountable, to be a nuisance, to let them know you're not going away. And so I would use social media. I would be speaking to my friends to write letters. I know they're going to tear the letters up, but I'd make them know that you haven't gone away. And I would not allow the government to be able to say he's a terrorist, he's a war criminal, without that government facing two things: the context of Guantanamo Bay and two, Canada's involvement there. So So that's the best advice I can give.